Michelle, Duvall, so good pronunciation.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I will Frenchify and Spanishify everybody's names. I will roll an R. They're like, it's just Smith. And I'm like, oh, okay. Not Smith? No? Okay. I'm Michelle Duvall. My company is Bar Variations. I'm a Pilates teacher, teacher of dance. And yeah, so here I am today.
Nice. And we were talking earlier with like the bar variations and some other stuff you're doing, like you're just wearing so many hats. Like you got your hustle on.
Yeah, so I was joking with you before we jumped on here. It's like I grew up in the time of the triple threat. So
Okay.
when I was coming up in dance, it was like you didn't just do ballet, you had to do tap, jazz, acro. I was a gymnast, and then I sang. I took voice lessons all through college. You won't find a tape, you won't hear me sing in public, but I loved it. It was something that I loved to do just for myself. But there was that mentality of like being versatile. Like that was the big word. Like,
Yes.
triple threat, be versatile, be able to do anything. Now there is pitfalls in that because sure, can you do everything, but should you? Right. So I
Right.
always come up with that like, okay, just because I can or I can figure it out or
Mhm.
try it, it doesn't mean I should.
Exactly.
So it's been interesting focusing on bar variations and diving into that realm because I really was up until pandemic, up until having my son, I was full-time Pilates teacher. My bar variations was my other kind of
Gig.
side business.
Yeah.
And
Right. Yeah.
my two different worlds were like, well, you're the bar girl. No, but I teach Pilates. So it was just very
Mhm.
interesting how kind of separate those were. And now diving and focusing more on bar variations now that, there's no in-person classes for me in New York City and then having my son and wanting to be home with him,
Yes.
it's been really interesting. And I just keep that mantra going, like just because I can doesn't mean I should. And now it's
Yes.
time to hire more of a team.
Yes, exactly. And it's so funny. I was thinking about that triple threat piece because there's a side of me that wants to remind the world that I still do other stuff when you start to get locked into something. So, if I'm doing a lot of these conversations, I'm like, oh, well, I still need to remind myself that I teach. So let me throw something up of me teaching. And it's like, well, I need to remind people that I still like I can actually do Pilates. So let me throw up a picture of me doing Pilates. Oh yeah, I got to remind people that I still work out. So let me get out on the, you know what I mean? So like we feel like we need to just remind ourselves and others that we have other things we do. We're not one trick ponies to some degree.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to see that you don't have to be one thing, that you're a multifaceted person. Like just because I teach bar doesn't mean I can't. I also in the past have taught yoga and
Mhm.
TRX and just because I'm a dancer, that was a big thing, identifying as an artist and a dancer. Just because I'm not
Yes.
doing it at that moment doesn't mean I'm not that person
Hmm.
somewhere else. So it's like if you want to think of yourself as a diamond and all those different sides, like there's just so much
Yes.
that makes you you. And what you were saying before about celebrating the different voices that you've had on, especially men, knowing Jason Williams. And
Hmm.
when I like found him on Instagram, I'm like, you're so cool. This is amazing. I want
Yes.
everyone to know who you are. And I love seeing him everywhere just because it's not what you expect, right?
Right.
And
Right.
most of the time you meet people, they're not who you expect. Like I can show up and I'm like the blonde hair, like especially being a dancer, you have this role. It's like, oh,
Yes.
you're blonde, you're blue-eyed girl next door. And I was like,
Yes.
no, I'm a
Mm.
modern dancer and I roll around on the ground in pain. And so it was just always like very conscious about like, I don't have to be who you think I am. And it's
Yes.
okay to be that person as well as,
As well as
right. The
dot dot
and
dot.
the
Yes.
the slash ands. I love that.
Yes. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, it's so well said. And I think that we do. We get in that, we get stuck in that, right? And we typecast ourselves to some degree. So,
Yeah, and I think too, I think it's easy for an industry to typecast you as well, right? And you get
yes.
into, right, this year we haven't had any in-person virtual, well, it's all virtual events, right? No conferences. So you go to, these conferences and you're that person, right? Like you
Yes.
show up as your brand and you're known for that and that's great, but then you're like, but I can also I can do that too. Like,
Yes.
but
Yes.
and I think it's great. Like, I love using social media in the way of like what you were saying, like, throwing something up there of like, hey, I also do this. Hey, I also do this.
Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
having those 9 blocks, it's like a showcase of like, here are
Yes.
all like, oh, excuse my windy curtain.
Yes.
Dramatic.
Yes.
And things falling. Um, but yeah, I think it's a good way. I don't know. I like using it that way because it's like,
Hmm.
hey, I'm a mom. I'm also, yeah, I do work out. Look at me. Let's have a pat on the shoulder and, show people that we can change, right? We can pivot, we
Yes.
can change, we can evolve, and
Right.
the
And
beauty of it all.
can I play the devil's advocate to that piece
Yeah.
where it's what about branding ourselves and the way
Mm-hmm.
that at some point we need to have some sense of expertise in something while we can expand out, right? Like for example, my Real Men Do Pilates page.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's a lot of me that I had to sacrifice to be able to say, I want to be perceived as the authority on men doing Pilates and to normalize that and to get
Mm-hmm.
people thinking about all those different things. So then I stopped doing my TRX posts and I stopped doing my this and that, so that everyone would just have their focus pinpointed on men doing Pilates. So there's a sense of letting some of those babies go for a season to be able to
Yeah.
get some attention.
Uh, yes, you hit the nail on the head. You do, there is a bit of a compromise, sacrifice, and a letting go. When I started Bar Variations 3 years ago, I had a pickup dance company and I was rehearsing and I was putting on shows in New York City. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a moment in rehearsal, I was like, I'm not focused. I can't truly give myself creatively to both things. If I'm going
Yes.
to really pursue starting a business on my own and focusing on the brand of that business, I didn't have the brain capacity to then also creatively put on an evening length performance. It just, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that much brain power to do it. And I just thought it was unfair to half-ass it on both sides. Excuse my
Yes.
language. Instagram. But I do think you really need to focus in. And I think when you realize that you have something, not necessarily, I like to say same, but different, right? You
Yes.
do the same thing as a lot of people Pilates, right? We both do Pilates, so
Mm-hmm.
same. Okay, we're both teachers, same, but your voice to it is what makes it different. And I think it's really
Yes.
important that people focus on their unique talents and their unique perspective so that you can carve that path out for yourself and give it some attention. I've worked a lot with Jenna Spino, who we were both on Brink, and
Yes.
she was there from like the inception of Bar Variations. I created a manual. I had another company years ago. So like long story short, I had another company. It went down. I
Yes.
stepped away for about like 5 years from bar. I like didn't want to
Wow.
see it, didn't want to touch it. I like no, it was like really bad. So when I was in California, I met Leslie. I worked for Leslie Logan. I'm the
Yes.
Kevin Bacon. You're gonna find so and then I came back to New York and my husband was like, you need to put this out there. And I was like, okay. So I was like, fine. I wrote it, got it out there. I didn't want to touch it. Met Jenna by connection through like Leslie and another friend, Julia Nicole. And they're like, oh, you should talk to her. Oh, okay, okay. And she's like, no, you have to focus on this one thing. You have something to say.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
important to
You have
tend
something
that
to
garden.
say.
Hmm.
Love that.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, for you too, like, I think what's important is you have something to say and you're saying it, you're
Right.
sharing it. Like you're doing this, and it's an important thing to do to not only share what you have to say, but you're also inviting all of us in the community that
Hmm.
resonate with or find that interesting or whatever to share what other people have to say because it challenges us. I think if I was just doing my company on my own in my own bubble and I never kind of checked in or had conversations with other people that maybe going through it. And after listening to your talk at Brink, you said something, and now I like quote you all the time. You have somebody to look up to, lock arms with, and then lift up. And I'm
Yes.
like, yes, yes, you put it into words. And I now just like tell everybody I'm coaching. I'm like, you need to go look up Martin Reed, and this is what he said, and this is like
Thank you. Yes.
exact, but it's just exactly what I mean, at least for me, it resonates a lot with me, and I think it's a great way to approach your business because you're not going to grow in a vacuum. And I
Right.
think it's important to, acknowledge that and also have those conversations so we can all make it a better, more fun, right? Like you said before, more fun place to be in.
Absolutely. And it's funny you're saying about interesting conversations. Like I find every conversation interesting.
Hmm.
There's no point at which I'm like, oh, there is like 47 minutes left in this chat. What are we gonna say next?
Oh,
Like,
I will
like,
talk your ear off. Don't you worry. I'll fill the
well, I
47 minutes.
I am a listener. I'll throw stuff out just to listen. I will extract every story out of you if you give me enough time because I just love hearing people's stories. It's very, very cool. So the bar thing now, so is you've come back to New York and
Hmm.
you've resurrected your bar program.
Yes. Yeah, so after the failure of that business, we'll call it, going through business partners, collaborations, and other partnerships that went sour. I was young. I was a dancer in New York City. I started Pilates because you don't make money as a modern dancer in New York City. And I was like, I need to make money so I can live somehow.
Yes.
And got involved with Pilates, and then that led to bar. And when that went down, I'm an introverted extrovert. I get super personal. I don't do anything that I'm not passionate about. And
Yes.
I've never had an office job. I've never gone on a formal interview. I'm like, oh, you want my resume? I don't know if I have that. So,
Right.
and I am very lucky for that. Like I've just always been on that path of knowing what I wanted to do um and it being what I wanted to do. So
Yes.
it was a really down moment when I was like, oh, it didn't work out. It was friends, it was like family type
Just
people. It
ugly,
was just
eh?
like, ooh, and I was like, okay, then I'll just ignore that. And being out in LA, it was great because it's like just a field of any type of workout you want to find. Like my favorite when I was there was Sandbox Fitness.
Okay.
Sand inside, like gross. But I was like, this is amazing. Like, how crazy. And then was it Training Me? Was the other one. I don't know if they're still around. This is like maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. But it was hot Australian men teaching boot camp classes. I'm like, there's a class for everyone. Like,
Right.
so it was really fun to like experiment and explore. The studio I was teaching at allowed me to create just these different classes, and they were like, great, teach it. Here, go for it. And
Yes.
I needed that time to kind of build myself back up. So when
Hmm.
returning back to New York, I knew what kind of place I wanted to work at.
Yes.
I got very lucky. I met these women that owned a studio 2 blocks from my house. It was great and allowed me to operate bar variations out of their facility. And
Amazing.
I was like, I can't ask for better than that. So I think it was really important for me to have that like incubator support of like, here you go,
Yes.
baby bird. And
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. And so coming back, there's something nice about being in the beginning of a business or a venture. Maybe, you can relate with core
Absolutely.
conversations of just asking and just kind of go like, not that I didn't have fear. I get almost more fear as I progress on because I like know
You
better.
know more.
And I was like advertising. My first workshop had one person. I took so many pictures. I was like, here we are.
Yes.
And I still fake people out. They're like, oh, you've been around forever. I'm like, no, I turned 3 in December.
Yes.
And like,
Yeah.
it's just, but if I didn't put that one thing out there, my next
Right.
workshop wouldn't have been sold out.
Right.
Right. So,
Exactly.
and not that it lands every time, right? We just have to keep putting ourselves out there. And there's something great about that newness of just having fun with it. And I think that's something as we grow into our work that we can always remind ourselves of like going back to the just the fun and the carefree of like, who cares? It's not a big deal. It's like we're
Right.
moving, whatever. How
And
lucky am I?
yeah, exactly. And that's if you watched my conversation with Leslie, which is like maybe the first few, the 2 or 3 weeks I was doing these,
Hmm.
those are the kind of chats we were having where we're saying like we have these conversations like there's 10,000 people in the room, even though there's like one eye in the icon in the corner, right? Like it doesn't
Oh
matter.
yeah.
Like you act big, you present big, you do it with 100% effort from day one, and then over time it just follows suit with that. And
Yeah, and I
yeah,
think we get caught up in that social media like the showcase, right? Like
yes,
whenever you go to any show or performance, you're not seeing the grind and the hustle and the
no,
blood, sweat, and tears behind it to get to that point. And even if you're going to perform, you're going to perform for one people or zero. So when I get
yes,
people like other teachers asking me, like I coach other teachers from my program and okay, so I was live streaming like 3 years ago. Everyone's like, "What? Zoom? Huh?" And I'm like, "No, it's great."
yes,
And
yes,
then I stopped it because it was fine. And then when this all started again, everyone's like, "I want to get online. I need to know how to stream." So I was coaching people through that. And the biggest question I get is like, "How do I reach more people?" Or how? And I'm like, stop focusing on all the people.
on the
You got to
yes.
really act local. Who do you know? Get your friends on there. Tell them to tell a friend. Start with your people and then branch out. And maybe you'll go global. Maybe awesome. It's
Mhm.
easier because we have things like this. But
Yes.
if you're trying to be the like worldwide brand on day one, unless you have, let's be honest, those resources and finances to advertise
Hmm.
and do that, it's okay if it's not. It's okay if it's
Yes.
people and they're engaging and they're, then paying you and they're telling friends. You would never open up a local studio and be like, man, these people are not flying in from England today. Like,
Right. True. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, it'd be nice. I think
Of course.
there
Yeah,
for
you'd feel
sure.
like awesome if that was happening, but realistically, you are going to get your friends and your family and your referrals from word of
Ex-
mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is a great segue to the conversation around community. And you have some great posts about how do we build community. So can you just talk about that, just generally speaking with that?
Yeah, so community is like a big pillar in bar variations. When I, having shared a little bit of my story before, I really felt like a lack of community. Even coming
Mm,
from the dance world, yes, there's a community, but no one's telling you where that audition is, and no one's telling you
brilliant.
exactly what to do because it is competition, and that's okay, right? It's
Mhm.
competition, but I think it can also be changed. I said, why not all go and have fun at an audition or have fun at putting your work out there and sharing it with others and acknowledging that there's other human beings doing what you do
Yes.
and it doesn't make you less special. So I really
Mm,
wanted to bring in community. The bar world is a little bit different than Pilates, where it really started out as big franchises and then it went down to licensing. And then, people who had experience that said, hey, I can do this. How I said it, I was like, I can do this.
yes.
And I don't have to pay someone else to say I'm qualified to teach this. So
Yes.
that's kind of how that started. And being, really into community and feeling that lack, I wanted people that didn't have the attachment to a big franchise or a licensing program to have somewhere to go. I didn't have anywhere to go. So I
Right.
wanted to create, first for myself, like, hey, who can I talk to? Who can I share
Hmm.
ideas with? Who are creating the workshops I don't want to create, I don't
Yeah,
need to do
pretty much.
everything.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, oh yeah, you should do that. Like I want to take that. And so
Hmm.
I started really just again, introverted extrovert. It took me a lot. Like I was the girl that would like not knock on your door like halfway. Maybe you would hear me to let me like, are you there? Like please answer. But getting outside of my box and forcing myself to comment and message people and
Yes.
start conversations. And that's really how it all started. And I don't know if Jason's still watching, but that's how I met him. And I went down to Baltimore. I was like, hey, you're awesome. Like, let's
Hmm.
have a chat. And so we talk on the phone. I'm doing an event with a friend and now colleague of mine, Shannon Warner. She's an energy healer, Pilates bar scientist, amazing woman. And we're doing an event called Be You. So I love that you said before,
Yes.
like being yourself, out of a conversation we had on Instagram 3 years ago, and now we have a
Yes.
friendship. We've done events together, and
Yeah.
not everybody I connect with is going to land for both of us, and it might not go anywhere, but you have to just, it's like if we were in person, like I think it's great that we have social media to hide behind a little bit with this, because if you are a shy person, I would go to the conventions. You would never know I was there. I'm like sitting around, I'm like watching because I'm like, ooh, this person, okay, that person, hey.
Yes.
And it can be really intimidating, but there's not much intimidation that goes into like a high or a wave
Hiding. Right.
and
Yes.
hiding behind your social media. And I think in a healthy way to get
Yes.
yourself out there. Because otherwise, I don't know if I would have really done it if it
Hmm.
was offline and in person.
True.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I started the community. And then um, just everything I put out there, I really encourage people to connect with each other. So now on my video library, it was really inspired by Pilates Anytime. Like, who wouldn't be? It's like mega.
Right.
But for bar, there's nothing like that out there.
So
And
smart. Yeah.
my whole brand at Bar Variations is being yourself. How can you teach bar?
Hmm.
How can you learn a method that's going to teach you how to teach like you?
Yes.
And so then you can come and we can have resources, we can have chats, we can have the podcast interviews together, and just
Hmm.
full circle, offering a place for people to come to that maybe don't feel like they have anywhere to go.
That's amazing.
You know,
Yeah.
we just want somewhere to go and
Uh,
hang out.
Michael, I know exactly. Well, Michael King was saying that, right? Like for his business, like that's like that was his tagline or his mission was to let us what is it? Let us find your uniqueness.
Yeah,
It's like that sense of like we can find your uniqueness and that kind of full circle with that sense of inclusion and all these different things. We have the sameness and then these things that are different and unique, and that's what it is. Like we want to have a place where we have balance and uniqueness
yeah,
and we celebrate those things and also highlight the things that make us special.
absolutely. And I mean, I love a good tagline. My tagline, so there's plenty of room at the bar.
Ah,
There's
yes.
room for everybody where you can be on this end and this end and still be able to come together, whether that's you've been trained in this style or this style,
Hmm.
or whether it's you're fusing things together, or whether it's the way you look or the way you move, your physicality, your
Yes.
age, your all of that. I think, like you said, celebrating the differences
Hmm.
and making that a positive instead of being like, oh, well, they do it that way. I don't do it that way. No,
Yes,
do
exactly.
it that way so I don't have to do all of the things. I don't want to
Hmm.
do all of the things.
Right.
And I think when we get caught up in that, like we've said, the triple threat for so many years, it's like, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can teach to this person. I can teach. I'm a great open level teacher.
Right. Yeah.
But like, I want other people to be able to teach super advanced. I want people to be able to teach a certain age demographic, and
Yes.
it's it's really important because then there's movement for everybody, and you can insert the word Pilates, movement, life into that bar word. There's plenty of room at the
Yes.
whatever for
Yes.
everybody, and knowing that diversity comes in many different forms,
Hmm.
girl, boy, all of that things. And there's room for it all because look at us. I mean, I'm not going to teach your people up in Canada unless
Hmm.
they're in maybe online, but then it's okay because they can then go to somebody else. And it just all supports the system,
Yes.
and the structure of what we do.
Yeah. The community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Exactly.
Holding hands. But that's why I started. I just wanted to hold hands with people and like
It's so like warm and fuzzy. It's
yeah.
just like
I know. Well, it's so funny. I always like joke. I won't fully mention what my husband does. We keep it very separate because his is not so warm and fuzzy. And
okay.
I'm like, it's like rainbows and butterflies, and you're like the trolls, and like he's a comedian, and so
Okay.
like I'm always like, oh, okay, like so dark, but we're that yin and the yang. So like
Yes.
I'll come out like doing the show tunes and He'll be like, come back down. I'm like, okay.
Oh, okay. He must shake his head.
No, it's good. He loves it. It's we're a good balance for each other.
Nice. And speaking of balance, you have a kiddo in the mix now too, while you're running these businesses.
Yes, I mean, I had very clear intentions of starting a business that I was able to do as a mom. So
Okay.
I was definitely that person. I was like the little girl that had all the baby dolls. I had all the dolls. I wanted to take care of everything. I started like mommy helper at like 12. I was full-time babysitting by like 13. And I just love kids. I love them. I taught kids classes. Like I still teach them actually. The only class I teach is like 7-year-olds. And
Fun.
they're just so squishy and they're so pure. There's like pure joy. Like I had a class yesterday, and just for example of like the essence of a kid, it's like we do a lot of freestyle.
Hmm.
So we're like, and I'm like, okay, you make up a move. And she's like, this. And I'm like, oh, yes. I'm like, they just do it and they put it out there with
Yes.
no judgment. And
No
that,
inhibitions.
oh, I love that feeling. And I love being able, like, selfishly to tap into that when I'm with
Hmm.
them. And you really have such an impact. And, we're talking about men. Like, I think it's important to support men in the places that they're not fully represented.
Yes.
Pilates is for girls, dance is for
Hmm.
girls.
Hmm.
No, but also like on the flip side, being a dance teacher for so many years, I really loved those teenage girls, like being able to have the impact on them, having
Yes.
them feel safe to share maybe
Hmm.
what was going, you walk in and they're like, oh my God, today. And you're like, it's gonna be okay. Like you can just be that voice. Maybe it'll
Yes.
land, maybe it won't, but like having taught for so long now, like seeing that come full circle where I have an old
Yes.
student like come back to me like, oh my God, it made such a difference to just like have a place to be myself or to
Yeah.
share and I just, there's something really, I don't know, amazing about that. And I think I went totally off track. Oh yeah,
No,
my
no,
own kid.
that's, but even
Oh yeah, my
even
kid.
even though you went off track, like where you're going with that, I totally agree with you. And there's something to be said for being another adult in the life of a child other than their parent, right? Because a parent can't always talk them off the ledge like you can when they can come in and just like be in the middle of some crisis in their world. And that's real and that's heavy for them. And
Totally.
then you give them a place where they can be safe and then they can move freely without judgment and they don't have to like that is an honor to be able to be that place in their lives.
100%. And, circling it back, like I always knew I wanted kids. And so
Mhm.
when I was like with my husband as boyfriend, girlfriend, I was like,
Mhm.
okay, I want kids. Like, what can I do to like do all of it? I want to selfishly do all of the things, right?
Right.
So how can I do that with supporting myself mentally as well as maybe financially and physically?
Right.
And so setting up bar variations with clear intentions of like, okay, I can do this and like
Mhm.
with one hand on a keyboard and push stuff out and be able to hire
Yes.
people and stuff like that. And for me, it was very important for me to be at home. I had a mom who worked and was at home. I have a dad too, but he was working. Now he's about to retire, and I was like, now it's your turn to take care of my kid.
Yeah.
Um, but my mom worked and was able. She was a preschool teacher, hence all the children stuff, and it was like it was nice to have her around. But I was also like, wow, you've changed your career multiple times, and I
Yes.
just always like it always spoke to me in that way. And whatever anyone's decision is fine. It's
Hmm.
doable. But I also knew that, like you were saying before, focusing in on something like right now, like I'm in my son's face all the, we're
Yes.
I'm his world. And I thought
Hmm.
for me, it was really important for me to be that first adult influence on him before, introducing him maybe to like other people or
Yes.
babysitter or whatever. And then I didn't get a choice. Then the
Mhm.
pandemic happened.
Right. Yeah.
And now it's me, my husband, and my baby in a one-bedroom apartment in New York City. And we're like, yay. Like,
Yeah.
we're super close because of it. But I don't know. I also like I just didn't want to miss out. I just like being around other kids. I just wanted to be a part of every step because there's going to come a
Yes.
day when he's 18 and he's like, I still kind of need you, but then he has his own world I won't know everything
Mm,
about. Like
right.
I won't know all his stuff and it makes me sad. But
Yeah.
right now I know everything and it's great and I just know it goes so fast.
So funny. Yeah, it does go fast. It totally goes fast. And but you just savor every moment. Like there's a moment where my other son's 14 and
Oh,
we went to this gym and we shot around, we worked out and then we did some other stuff and then this little kid came by with his dad and the child was like maybe like 3 and just barely walking and kind of dawdling around and stuff. And my son was like, "Dad, do you like miss us being like that young? Like, what was your favorite age?" I was like, we just like shot hoops, worked out, did a medicine ball toss workout and thing, and now we're lifting weights and we're talking and cracking jokes. Like, this is
this
the
is
best stage, like
yeah.
right
Yeah.
here. Like, I don't pine for like, oh, it was so cute when I was holding them. Like, I love every moment with them.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so important is to like, I'm definitely that person that like squeezes the life out of life. And to, even when I travel, I'm like, I don't know, I'm coming off like a crazy person, but like, I want to, if I'm never going to go back to that place again, or, that moment's never going to happen again, like,
Right.
ooh, just like do all of the things. So if anyone's ever on vacation with me, I will itinerary it. We will hit every spot with every good restaurant. Like, I just I don't know. I'm glad I'm that way, especially this year, being like,
Mm,
okay, it's really hard to all of a sudden erase everything off the calendar.
right.
I have family in the UK, my sister's there. They haven't met my baby. Like, there's so many
Mm,
hard things that are gonna happen
yes.
that, like, when it's good, like, oh, I just like hold on so tight. So I don't have those moments so often of like, oh, I wish he,
Yeah. Wish
still had
that.
his little like rat tail and the baby hair, like, like,
Mhm, mhm,
like,
mhm. Yeah.
so then I can enjoy it and then be happy. I don't know, more fulfilled. I don't know what the word is, but like,
No, you're bang on. That's
yeah, every like
there's a
stage
sense
is
of
a good stage.
contentment with each phase of life that you're in. And as much
Yeah.
as we're just like it sounds like two people just talking about how awesome our kids are, that's how it is with our life and business too, right? Like when we come to a place of contentment with where we're at, we don't say, "Oh, I just wish that we were back in the days when everyone was flooding into our studio." It's like, no, like we have opportunities here. We're meeting new people. We can find so many amazing things that are happening at this stage in our
100%.
businesses infancy or our child, and so
Yeah, and being open to the unexpected, right? So I was teaching dance for like 15 years, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to have kids. I need to stop now in order for me to like make that happen and have the space to make it happen. And this started, and I'm teaching dance in the park, and it's the most fun hour out of my week. And
yes.
I do miss going to the studio, but I'm also, again, maybe it's been teaching so long and I've moved a couple times. Everyone's going to be okay. They don't need me. I
Mhm.
can be like, I'm more okay now being in and out of people's lives and
Yes.
not so dependent on staying and
Right.
always being in somebody's life on that
Question.
aspect. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
When your son gets to that point, will you be able to say that he'll be
Uh,
okay, he doesn't need me?
I mean, there are going to be a lot of silent tears and like me hiding under my covers. I'm super conscious of that even now. I mean, being in a tiny apartment, it's not ideal because I know I'm so present. I go in the
Yes.
kitchen, he can still like he's like,
Yeah.
you're in the kitchen? Like I'm literally across the room. I'm not that far.
Right.
So I do already try for myself, like the first walk I took, like I was like, I gotta go out by myself just
Mm.
to like
They
remind
always
my
need their mom.
they always I know good. But you have
Yeah.
to remind yourself that like even in a marriage or even in a partnership, you
Yes.
are your own person and you have to
Right.
live with inside yourself. And
Yes.
um I have like my husband and I are very independent and then we are very much like have our things together.
Mm.
But even becoming a mom, I'm like, okay, now I'm three different people in this. I'm
Yes.
myself, I'm a wife, and I'm a mom. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be really hard, but I do subscribe. I don't know if you're familiar. There's a woman, her name's Lenore Skenazy. Her books
Okay.
are about free range parenting.
Okay.
Not like chickens, don't just let them go, but
Just let them go.
just
Just
let
fence
them,
them in
yeah,
and let them run. Huh.
yeah. I'm not that hands off. Like I'm like a little bit like even just watching him stand, like I had to like let him just kind of like fall and bump his head a little bit sometimes to be like, I gotta be okay with that, and I'm so conscious about that. Like, okay, how can I set him up to be successful and
Mhm.
happy and healthy and not so dependent on his parents that he's like, can't like I think the worst was like going to college and like meeting people that were just couldn't function. I'm like,
Yes.
this is here's how to write a check. Like here, like I don't know.
Right. I feel you.
And and seeing like I mean, this is a whole nother conversation, but just seeing people like, the I went to an art school, so it was a very different experience than a college. But
Right.
seeing people like literally go off the rails and get so into like drugs and alcohol
Mhm.
just because they
Because they're
could. I was
yeah,
like,
because they're free for the first time.
I was like, whoa. I was like, that that's scary to me. And
Yes.
like, I maybe I'm like an old soul inside, but I was just like, okay, I never would want that for my kids. Like seeing myself maybe through my own parents' eyes, like
Yeah.
I don't want my son to be like, yeah, like it's freedom time. Like I don't want to be so around him that
Yes. I know what you
he
mean.
gets lost. I want him
Yep.
to have a solid enough guide so he
Yeah.
can,
It's a dance, right? And to find
yeah.
that. And when I had Philip Griffin on last week, and he was talking about like coming into adopting like 4 kids and just
Wow.
like
Yeah.
parachuted into parenthood, and the craziness that is there. We were talking about the sense of looking at the awesomeness of raising this child, and then this ebb and flow between looking at like don't mess this up, and then other times when you're like, we got this, I'm gonna just like a basketball game. Like you have the 2 shots to win the game, and
Totally.
your self-talk can be hit these, go home with the W, or it could be like, I played so terrible today, don't mess this up as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's like a good guide as teachers of movement, like, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're like, I'm gonna like mold and I'm doing all of the right things. And it's just any in a game or any of that, like, if we're only there to offer, right? Like you
To
said, like
facilitate or to
opportunities,
cultivate. Yes.
totally. And,
Yes.
I wasn't a perfect person. I definitely like got myself in some, not major trouble. I was pretty good, but like, or like I have like PTSD of like, oh my God, I can't believe I walked through that park at like 3 in the morning with those high heels and like just half conscious. Like, what was I thinking? Like,
Yes.
it could have gone so wrong. But what you're saying, it's like you're either gonna sink that basket or you're not. And then that's what life is, right? And
Yes.
I think being able to, in our work, try to set ourselves up as much as we can control
Mhm.
or like build where when the ball doesn't like is a total like what is it when it hits the net? It like doesn't like go
Rims
in. I
out.
forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Believe it or not, I played basketball for like 1 year. It was like pathetic. Like so,
And then you found dance.
yeah, I was like the kid that would do cartwheels like down the court. I'm like, yeah.
Okay.
But like, yeah, if you totally miss it, like what I try to like always tell myself, like, it's just like you have to like go through ish sometimes to
Hmm.
get to that other peak, and
Right.
as much as I would like to control everything and have it perfect and have a perfect world for my son and, get him to like do all of the things in the right
Hmm.
way and but it's just not he's going to go through stuff that it's going to be so heartbreaking and you just try not to think of it in the moment because you're like,
I
oh,
know.
like,
Well, it's true. Those are paralyzing thoughts, right? I mean, I could sit here and be like, what if this bombs out? And I'm like, you've had not failures, but like things that didn't succeed with your last businesses. So I'm sure that those challenges informed your present day success as much as past successes, right? Like,
oh, hands down. I mean, I think the failure informs it way more than the successes.
yeah,
And
most of the
uh,
time, yeah.
because that's the way I think our ego works. It's always going
Right.
to be like, you can't do that. It's not going to work. Hey, it didn't work before.
Hmm.
Oh, if you hire this person out and you're spending this money, you might not get that money back. It's always, we always like come first, I think, to the scarcity thoughts before
Yes.
we go to the abundance thoughts.
True.
And I think that's the getting through it is like you have to keep being like, no, well, the
Hmm.
shoe won't drop or the basket will get in
Hmm.
at some point.
At
You're
some
gonna
point.
figure it out.
Right. Exactly.
You shoot it like as many times as you can. The one's gonna go in,
Yeah.
I don't know what those odds are. No one can guarantee as much as we want to guarantee, but yeah, I think that is like the paralyzing parenting thought. Like even just watching him, like he's starting to stand up,
Hmm.
um, which I'm like, it's okay, you can sit for a bit longer. You're 7 months old, like sit back down. So I'm
Yes.
gonna
Because
like
when they
hold you
figure that
back.
out, yeah, exactly. It's
But yeah,
on.
seeing like just also like looking at a baby like learn how to move. I did not teach him how to move. So the joke was with my son, like he could pop his head up right away. And it was like great. And he's like wide open. He's like, I'm here.
Hmm.
And then he would do these planks that were like no joke, like perfect planks. I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
So I did teach like a few outdoor classes like this summer with my old clients, and they're like, oh my God, Michelle, like he definitely heard you when you were teaching. And it was a joke, but it was
Too
just like,
funny.
this kid, I did not do that.
Hmm.
That was inside him. And so if I can continue as he grows older, understand that he has that inside of him and then to
Yes.
reflect that back to myself of like
Hmm.
I have that same intuition that I can tap in on whether on to whatever new projects that I'm taking
True.
on or
Yeah.
you know
It's true.
the
Exactly.
gut. I don't know.
We didn't even talk about Marimba and you guys and how close your kids were. But
I
also,
know.
and also the piece about the locking arms, right? Like, you mean, like, there you go, someone like running a business, raising a child, like, you guys are really in that locked arm phase of your
uh,
mentorship where you're peer mentoring each other, right? Like,
totally. So I met Marimba at Momentum Fest now 2 years ago, and took classes and we were all kind of like hanging out and friendly. And I drove her home from the airport and we're like, oh, we should totally meet up. So a couple months later, we meet up and I was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. She's like, so am I. And I was like, no way. It was a
yeah,
total like girl chat.
right.
Do right around the same time. We're like, oh, this is, and then there were so many things that we kept saying. Where I was like, me too, me too, me too. So we locked arms and like the more we went through our pregnancy, just a great friendship developed and also like being able to like have somebody to like go through that time with I think is so
Hmm.
special and then all of a sudden just I mean everything we could not have had the worst timing to deliver our babies and
Right. Yeah.
they're 3 hours apart which is so special and
Wow.
they couldn't I mean they're amazing and but being able to like send her a message in the hospital or to be like at 3 in the morning, like, how are you doing? Are you like, how are you feeling? Oh my God, this is like, just, it's been like unbelievable. And,
Yes.
I know she has that same with Grace, like they've went through Grace Hurry and her had a similar birth experience. And,
Hmm.
Grace recently talked about putting it out there for somebody else because she had
Yes.
that, hand with her. And it really is so, I think, important to like, oh, just lock arms. And when we get together now, like it just, our kid, like it's just so beautiful to see them like not, what I guess like I'll back up. What bothers me right now is like when people are like, oh my God, they'll stop me in the street. What a
Yes.
crazy time to have a baby. Oh, poor, I hope the
Yeah.
world's better for. I'm like, he has no idea. And I started telling people, I'm like, listen, his world is amazing. He
Yes.
has friends, he's got his milk, he's fine. I'm just like, and I should never put my
Hmm.
down times on him,
Right.
right? Like he's going through the beautiful time. He meets his little friends. They're having, I call them strongman competitions because the
Hmm.
two of them, like, I'm like, you get developmentally crazy. And so it's like, what better? I mean, what else can we ask for?
Right.
And
Right.
was it fun to be told you're not going to have anybody come meet your kid for months? Or is it fun to still not have him know everybody in your world? Like,
Hmm.
no, it sucks. And like, there were so many tears, and especially like with what Marimba went through. Like,
Yes.
but what's coming out of that is a bond that we would have never
Right.
had. And
That
I
will
just
last long after the memories, right? Like,
absolutely. And what they'll take out of it, like they're so chill. Like they're it's like yes, like everything's going to be okay. And then also like instilling in him and like reach out to people, lock arms with people
Hmm.
and share and don't be afraid to reach out, even when you're going through a hard time.
Yes, I was gonna say that part. Yeah, exactly.
I was on the phone 20, I was like, I'm not doing screens with my kid. The phone is in his face like 24 hours a day because it's the only way in the beginning that I could get him to meet people or have people
Hmm.
meet him. And I don't know. And it was just whatever you're going to expect, like throw it out the window. But then, like, yeah, being able to just hold, like, tell, like, show him, like, the importance of coming together and finding a community and takes a village, right? Who's in your
Absolutely.
village?
Yeah, exactly. We're at 57.
Oh my God, I could talk forever.
I know. But I just loved our ebb and flow between parenting and running a business. Like, there is really no difference if you were to just extract the principles from one and apply to the other.
Hands
Um,
down.
and
Work baby,
honestly,
baby,
yeah,
baby.
exactly, exactly. I think I just needed like this nice light conversation just to remember how fun it is to be a parent.
It is. I know.
Yeah.
Well, we talk so much, like, so much about business, and what I'll say, kind of last thing of that is like, okay, now all I'm talking about was like my business, and now all I'm talking about is my kid. Like a friend of mine, and I think she's still watching. She was like, "We got to talk about something else." So we started a book club. I was like,
Too funny. Yes.
there's always like just finding those different sides of you and
Yes.
finding the people that want to lock arms with you. I think is just it's the key to the key, right? I don't know.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well
Well,
said. Well, awesome. Well,
so
thank you for
good.
your time today.
Thank you. And thanks so much for having me. This is great.